So Myles Garrett is going to be a 49er, you say? We'll see about that. All right. Welcome back to Last Second Sports, where we are giving you our take down to the last second. It's the week of the Super Bowl. Football is almost over. One measly game left is all we have, folks. One measly game. And it's a game we could care less about, to be real with you. But the news never stops. Myles Garrett today requests a trade officially from the Cleveland Browns. Now, this is where it gets interesting because the Cleveland Browns have said they have no interest in trading Myles Garrett. They said that before the statement came out. They reiterated that today. They're not even listening to offers, supposedly, which is really just code for you better come correct or we're not even going to consider this whole thing, which makes a lot of sense. I mean, you look at Myles Garrett and what he means for that franchise. I mean, he's the perfect player on and off the field. He's exactly what you want. He's a leader. He's well-mannered. I mean, he is a guy that you want to build your franchise around, and they've done so. Great player on the field as well. Just goes about his business. He had one incident with the Steelers quarterback. He ripped his helmet off or whatever. That was kind of crazy. But other than that, I mean, he's been exactly what you want. I think most people forget about that. But Myles Garrett, man, he's like the perfect player. So why would Cleveland want to get rid of him? Well, it makes sense for them. It really does. Cleveland is in a whole heck of a lot of trouble from a cap perspective. They've taken on this Deshaun Watson contract, which is absolutely atrocious. He's probably not even going to play in 2025. They're going to have to figure out how to move on from Deshaun Watson. And the only way to kind of rebuild on the fly is get rid of a little bit of an older asset, recoup as many picks as possible and or players, and just go about your business. So I do think that they will eventually trade Myles Garrett, but I also don't think they're going to be in a rush to do so. Yeah, they're going to want to get it done before they pick in the draft, assuming that a first-round pick is coming back, which I'm sure that it is, if not more. But as far as today getting that trade done, I don't think there's a rush for them to do it. I don't. Now, 49ers perspective, everybody's saying yes to this trade. I feel like I'm one of the, if not the only one, at least anybody with some sort of platform that is saying, don't do it. I don't think the 49ers should do it. I love Myles Garrett. Of course, Myles Garrett makes you better. But a lot of people are talking about this from the angle of, well, Myles Garrett's going to be inexpensive. I mean, he's only, a couple $1 million cap hit the next 2 years. Yeah, that is true. But are we not forgetting how the NFL works? And we just had 2 players this last offseason that were in similar situations where they ran out of guaranteed money. We've got a couple more coming up again in Fred Warner and George Kittle. Players that are great, that don't have guaranteed money, they don't just play on those contracts. They rework those deals. They extend those deals. Myles Garrett is in line for an extension of his deal. He's going to want more guaranteed money. So I would be shocked if he gets traded and within 48 hours, we don't hear of a rework deal immediately. So whatever the price is that everybody's talking about when it comes to Myles Garrett, that price is going to change. He's going to get paid big time money, and he's worth it. He absolutely is worth it. Now, when I compare this to the Max Crosby situation, remember Diamador Lenore came out a couple weeks ago and was like, hey, Max would look good in a 49er uniform. Max Crosby is going to cost more to attain, I believe, from an asset standpoint Meaning the 49ers, if they want Max Crosby, they're going to have to give up, let's say, 2 firsts and a third. If they want Myles Garrett, they can probably get him for a first and a third. And the reason is age. I mean, Myles Garrett's going to be 30 this year. Max Crosby's a few years younger. It makes sense. But as far as what they're eventually going to get paid, it's going to be very close. I mean, we're talking Nick Bosa type money. So to me, paying 2 guys Nick Bosa type money, which is equivalent to the 15th highest paid quarterback or whatever it is, something like that, and then also paying Brock Purdy top 5 quarterback money, it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Now, it makes sense if you feel like this team is ready to win next year and you're going in on a all-in 1-year play. But I don't believe that to be the case. I don't. I don't believe that just simply adding Myles Garrett to this roster gets them over the hump. I think you're still going to have problems stopping the run. I think you're still going to need multiple defensive tackles. So to me, I say no. I think the 49ers would be better off taking that 30 million, dumping it into players that are going to give them depth, and then taking those picks and just staying young. Because if Brock Purdy truly is the franchise guy and they're going to pay him as such, then you've got to build around him long term. If the 49ers were truly in a all-in year next year where it's like, hey, we got to trade for Myles Garrett, we're going all in, we're making this move, then you wouldn't pay Brock Purdy. You'd let him sit on that contract and you would bring in as many assets as possible and go all in for the next year or two. But that's not the position that they're in. They're trying to, yes, be competitive now and of course win now. They're going to portray that they want to win now, and they are. I'm not saying they're not. But they're also going to want to compete in the future. And the 49ers 2 years from now are not going to appreciate this move. They're just not. I was always told, do something today that your future self will thank you for. The 49ers making this trade today for Myles Garrett and giving up those assets and then reworking that contract and paying him a ton of money. Do we think the 49ers in 2027 are going to appreciate that move? I don't think they would. I don't think they would. So if you make that move and you don't win a Super Bowl, then we're all just pissed off. And now the future is mortgaged even more. Or you can still be a competitive team, still potentially win it. It's not like Brock's expensive, but you can go about it a different way. You can build depth. You can do it through youth. And then also remain competitive for many years to come. So for me, I say no to the Myles Garrett deal. Now, the flip side of that is there's probably going to be a really good team that gets him, and there's a potential that team is in the NFC. I think I look at the Detroit Lions, for example, and I feel like us and the Lions are on different wavelengths. The Lions have already paid their quarterback. They've already given new deals to pretty much everybody that is going to need one in the upcoming years, other than Aiden Hutchinson. And they have about as much money as the 49ers have to spend. They can afford to trade their first round pick and go get Myles Garrett. They can do that. And it makes sense for that franchise to do it. They're not mortgaging their future the way that the 49ers would be, because they don't have the $30 million defensive end. They don't have the middle linebacker and the tight end that are up for money again. They don't have the highest paid running back and the highest paid left tackle. They reworked all those deals. They're good for a while. So the money they have to spend is closer to the allocation they're going to have to spend over the next few years. The 49ers, it's kind of like funny money. Yeah, you've got the money technically on the books now, but you're going to need that money eventually because you're about to pay your quarterback. So for me, I just let those teams go crazy with a Myles Garrett. Maybe it's the Cardinals, maybe it's the Commanders, maybe it's the Lions, maybe it's the Bills. Different spots, completely different spots than the 49ers. And I don't think the 49ers need Myles Garrett to necessarily portray that you're all in. I think the 49ers need depth. Injuries are going to happen. It's the same reason I said no to Max Crosby. It's the same reason I said no to T. Higgins. It's the same reason I'm going to say no to every big name player that becomes available, because I want them to prioritize depth and youth and speed. They're already going to be the oldest team in the NFL, projected to be next year. Adding another 30-year-old elite player doesn't make that better. It doesn't fix any long-term issues. It doesn't help them be better in the run game. So to me, no on Myles Garrett. And those are the reasons why. Now, I definitely listen. I totally understand why you would want Myles Garrett. I'm not a dummy. I would love to have Myles Garrett. Absolutely love it. But, I've heard some crazy trades thrown out like, well, what if you traded Nick Bosa for Myles Garrett? Okay, yeah, I mean, Myles Garrett is better than Nick Bosa. There is no argument. But trading Nick Bosa comes with a $30 million cap hit. So that doesn't help either. You just take $30 million for him to not be on this roster and trade him to the Cleveland Browns? That doesn't make a lot of sense. So I don't know. That's where I'm at with it. I'm curious to see what your thoughts are. What's interesting, hello world, is I am not a big NBA guy anymore. I used to follow it religiously, but it just doesn't intrigue me anymore. I don't know. When the playoffs come around, I always watch, but like the game in, game out, I'm just not a big fan of it anymore. But that trade was crazy. The Lakers absolutely won that trade. I don't know what Dallas was doing. Why wouldn't you shop Luka? You have a year and a half before you have to pay him. Even if you've grown tired of Luka, Luka's a top 3 player in the NBA. Trading him for what they traded him for is terrible. Absolutely terrible. Doesn't make any sense to me, but hey, such is life. What's up, Papa J? Jesse, you get hate in this Niner community because you're not biased. It's unfortunate that the fan base is soft. I don't know. I think everybody gets hate on anything that you do. I do appreciate you for having my back, but I think you can go into anybody's comment section and you can find hate. Nobody is 100% liked. Even the people that show for the team, like there's people that are hating on them as well. So it is what it is. Brother Bob says, "What up, my guy? We pay Bosa enough." Yeah, they do pay Bosa a lot. Nice to see you, Brother Bob. Casey Cold says, "Niners would be better off drafting D-line like the Rams drafted Verse and Fisk. That's the formula, and the D-line is the strength of this draft." I agree with you. Completely agree with you. Yes. The Rams were able to revamp their defensive line. They lost the best interior pass rusher, maybe of all time. Aaron Donald might be the best defensive tackle, period, of all time. Maybe. They lost him, and by the end of the season, their defensive line might have been better because they went and got a lot of players over the last couple of years. They just invested and invested and invested. The Eagles 2 years ago had 70 sacks. It's like the 4th most sacks of all time for any team ever. I would argue this defensive line right now might be better than that one. No, they're not producing the sacks, but as far as stopping the run and the versatility they bring, and it's a whole new defensive line. Just go get young. Go get cheap. That's where I'm at with it. I agree. Ryan says, "Solid hat, my guy. Appreciate you." I have so many freaking hats, and I usually only wear the last second sports stuff, but I've got some pretty nice 49er hats. I should wear them more often. And I forgot I even had this one. Papa says, "I agree with you about depth, but man, it's intriguing for sure. It definitely is. It for sure is. Myles is a guy who can get you a big play when Mahomes is driving to try to win a Super Bowl. Yeah, he definitely can. He definitely can. I don't disagree with that. But in order to get to that Super Bowl, you're going to have to stop the run. And I don't think the 49ers are in a situation where they can stop the run just by getting Myles Garrett. So, Joey, I didn't see it. Just sometimes YouTube kind of freaks out and doesn't work. It's all good. Just throw your comment here. I'll read it. Do I think Chip Kelly will succeed as an offensive coordinator for the Raiders? I don't know. I love Chip Kelly, not because of the 49ers. I mean, that was terrible, but the run he had for the Oregon Ducks, I mean, he made the Oregon Ducks relevant. So I'll always have a special spot in my heart for Chip Kelly. What he did in college football this year was pretty miraculous. I think he did a really good job game planning, but he had the best of the best. We'll see what it looks like with the Raiders. I think it's intriguing. Pete Carroll has been pretty stagnant as far as his hires, their play calling. It feels like they're stuck in the 1960s. That's why I had no issue with Seattle moving on from him a couple years ago. But I'm intrigued by it. I don't know that I would be excited if he was coming here as our offensive coordinator, but I'm definitely paying close attention. I'm certainly intrigued by it. Sell that merch, King. Don't move. Yeah, well, listen. They're not going to be bad because of Chip Kelly. They're going to be bad because they're just bad. I did check on Deion Walker, the Kentucky guy, right? Yeah, if the 49ers were to get another defensive tackle, like if they take a defensive tackle in the first round, like one of these passer rush guys, then I would love to have somebody like a Deion Walker. If you can somehow get him in round 3, which I think he's probably more of a late round 2 guy, but if you could somehow get somebody like that to pair with your defensive tackle, like to be that run stopper, that would be fantastic. Jay Jonah says, I highly disagree. I think most people do, by the way, Jay. You act like the Niners don't have 10 draft picks and 50 million in cap money. You ACL like Parag, Marate, can't finesse the contracts like he always does. Oh, you act like, sorry, look like ACL. It's like ACL. What are we talking? Bulky? Yeah, I talked about that. They do. They have 50 million, but it's funny money. I mean, you have a ton of free agents. You have your rookie class that you've got to pay. Brock Purdy, this year is not going to cost you a lot, but eventually he will. You're going to pay him. So that money does dwindle pretty quickly. It's not like it's not the same as, and I brought up the Lions, not the same as the Lions having basically the same amount of money. The Lions have already paid all their players. All those guys are already on the books. So it's true money that they have. The 49ers, that is not the case. You can't have 3 guys making quarterback money on your roster and have a deep roster as well. I'm not saying they can't afford Garrett. They can afford Garrett. 100%. You are right. They can afford Garrett. But at what cost? You can't have it all. And I don't know about you, but I've watched the 49ers slowly but surely lose all their depth and get old. And Myles Garrett is a great player, but Myles Garrett doesn't help their depth and he doesn't help them get younger. So it's not about can they afford him? Yes, they can afford him, but there will be a cost. There will absolutely be a cost. But those guys are going to take cap hits. I mean, you get rid of Debo, you're going to pay almost 30 million this year to do so. So it's not like you just dump Debo and it's like, okay, now I've got all this free money to go get depth. No, you're still paying. You're actually paying more if you want to do this right. And I agree with this, by the way. They should move on from Debo and they should do it this year and not carry that money over. I'm in agreement with you. But to do that, they're going to actually pay more against the cap this year to move on from Debo than if they just keep him on the roster. So that doesn't help them in the sense that they can go get more players. You don't just get to move on from Debo and bring in other assets. You're going to pay more for Debo. And then again, you do it after June 1st, you're paying 17 million next year for him to not be on the roster. Like the money's always going to be there. It's just where do you want it to go? So, and then technically you do it post June 1st, that money is not available to you until June 1st. So at that point, the draft's already happened. All the free agents have been signed. What good are you actually doing? I don't disagree with a lot of what you're saying. I like what you're saying, and I understand why you would want Myles Garrett. Trust me, I do. But as far as like my point, none of that changes my opinion because I'm taking all of that into account. As it says, I wouldn't want to get Garrett if it hamstrings our future. But if you can get Cousins cheaply, would you trade Purdy for Garrett and draft a quarterback second, third round? Okay, so no, I not for Cousins, not for Cousins. And you could get Cousins for very inexpensive. You could. Would I trade Purdy for Garrett? I don't know that immediately makes you better either. It's like, yes, I don't want to pay Purdy big time money, but I also don't think Purdy's a bad player, and the quarterback position is more important than a defensive end. However, if we just go my original route, which is don't pay Brock Purdy, then Myles Garrett can he can make sense. The scenario I'm saying no to Myles Garrett is not my scenario, which is don't pay Brock Purdy. Because if that's the case, then yes to Myles Garrett, 100%. What are we doing? Get it done. And you can go get depth. All of the things that you want can happen. I'm operating under the assumption that Brock Purdy is going to be paid because that's what the 49ers are going to do, or I presume they're going to do. So if that's what they're going to do, then I have to operate the rest of this team around that assumption. If it's me running the team, I'm not paying Brock, and yes to Garrett. 100%. But you can't do it all and have a deep roster. So based off of what the 49ers are going to do, how do I make this team the best it can be, not only for this year, but for the future while you have Brock Purdy? That is not trading for Myles Garrett, in my opinion. Jesse, what's your opinion? Everybody has their opinion, but it's going to work or it's going to backfire on the 49ers. That's why I'm thinking because it backfires us could be a bad decision and bad choice. Yeah, I don't listen, I'm not for it for sure. I'm not for it. Absolutely not. I'm not quite sure about the verse you're referencing, but I'll look it up. An average. Yeah, I mean, but we say that, but average quarterback, Hall of Fame pass rusher, or not a Hall of Fame pass rusher, or excuse me, or the Hall of Fame pass rusher with below average quarterback play. I mean, we've watched Myles Garrett rot away in Cleveland. Why? Because below average quarterback play. I mean, one thing I'm not going to do just because I'm not a fan of paying Brock is talk down on what I think he is as a player. I do think he's a good player, but good players don't get elite money or shouldn't get elite money. They do get elite money in the NFL, but they shouldn't. But the quarterback position is really, really tough to figure it out. So Brother Bob says Miles won't help our anemic offense under Kyle Levy. Yeah, listen, Miles is not going to make the run defense better. Miles is not going to protect Brock Purdy. Miles isn't going to fix our second corner spot. Miles isn't going to bring back Dre Greenlaw. There's a lot of things that you potentially could be foregoing by getting Myles Garrett. Joseph Ehrenberg says Garrett is similar to Saleh pickup in the sense that the team will probably not benefit from it 2 years from now. He will probably be gone next season. Saleh might be, yeah. If you get Myles Garrett, he's going to be around for a while, but it is going to hurt your depth money-wise. It just will. The Robert Saleh thing is, I mean, whatever. If he's gone in a year, then that means the 49ers were probably pretty dang good. I'll take that. And Dazza says, I still don't get how Brock couldn't win a Super Bowl at $900K. How's he going to win at $50 million or so? I don't know, man. I don't know. That's why I wouldn't pay him. Jesse, I think we should trade for him and strengthen the defense. This way we can close out games and take pressure off the quarterback. That, again, what do you think of the quarterback, though? Because to me, this take can only exist in a world that you don't believe you have an elite quarterback. For those that think Brock Purdy's elite and Brock should get paid, this take can't exist. The take of, oh man, we should run the ball more. Oh man, we got to get this and that. Oh man, we need a number one wide receiver. We should go get Higgins and then also protect him and do all the things. Those takes can't exist if you feel like you have the guy, because you're not going to have everything. It's impossible to do. Impossible unless you just hit on every draft pick. Like the Eagles. The Eagles kind of do have it all. They do. But they draft so dang well. And even the Eagles are in a situation because of the money that they have output. They're probably going to lose Josh Sweat, who was their most productive exterior pass rusher. They're probably going to lose Milton Williams, who is a rotational defensive tackle and has been very good for them. But they're going to draft their replacements and they'll probably hit. That's just what they do. But when those guys come up to be paid, they can't pay them because they're paying a bunch of other people. So it just depends. Like, what is your thought on Brock Purdy? Because those two things don't jive. Cliff 5 Super Bowl says one player will not fix us. I agree. He will not fix us by himself. Dazza says Niners also don't truly invest heavily into the defensive line or the offensive line like the other teams, and have been awful in the first and second round of the drafts. Yeah, they have. They've missed. I mean, they've just flat out missed. And I laid it out on the Bleacher Report stream that I did, but I'll talk about it real quick one more time. They have missed in the trenches a ton. So the first 4 years of the draft, they drafted 10 players in the trenches. Only 2 of those got second contracts. And that was Bosa and McKivitz. So they're just not good at drafting in the trenches, period, throughout their tenure. Now, this year, we have 2 more players that are up for contract that were drafted in the trenches a couple years ago. That's Aaron Banks and Jalen Moore. There's a good chance that they don't sign either of those guys. And the 49ers, through the first 5 years, the 12 players they drafted in the trenches, only 2 of them got a second contract. So the 49ers just have to be better. And that, I guess, that's another argument that you can say, hey, go get Myles Garrett because I don't trust the 49ers to draft anyways. That's fair. That is totally fair. But first round picks don't cost $30 million either. So even if you miss, it's like at least you're not spending $30 million. But Myles Garrett is the sure thing. So that makes it tough. I like what it's interesting because the Rams are kind of doing what I've been talking about the 49ers needing to do since last offseason with Debo Samuel and Juszczyk and CMC, where I don't know if you saw, but Cooper Kupp came out and basically put out a statement saying the Rams don't want me anymore. They're looking to trade me and do it quickly. And this is not going to be a big time deal, by the way. This is not going to be the Rams get a third round pick for Cooper Kupp. That's not the way this is likely going to play out. This is going to be like when the Rams traded Jalen Ramsey and when they traded Von Miller. Or maybe they didn't trade Von Miller. There was somebody else. There was Jalen Ramsey, and there was a couple guys that they traded. Either way, when they traded those guys, they're just trying to clear cap space. And they believe that this player is not helping us win anymore. This player is aging, and we want to get this player off our books as quickly as possible. So I would imagine they're going to trade Cooper Kupp. They're probably going to send a 6th round pick with Cooper Kupp, and they'll get another 6th round pick that's 10 picks higher in the draft, something like that. That's the trade I expect for Cooper Kupp because the new team is going to take on some of that money, and the Rams are just trying to get out from under the contract and move on. But they're ruthless, and they've been ruthless this whole time. They let Von Miller go after he basically came in and helped win them a Super Bowl. They let go of Jalen Ramsey. They moved off of Jared Goff. They didn't hang on to Gurley for too long. Once it was clear he was shot out, gone. Who was the running back that they had? I want to say Swift, but it's not Swift. Swift was the Lions running back, plays for the Bears. Either way, he wanted more playing time. That's cool. You can get more playing time. It's just not going to happen here. See you later. You're cut. They're ruthless. Absolutely ruthless. And I just wish the 49ers had a little bit more of that where it's, hey, we recognize that Debo Samuel is very expensive and not producing at the same level. So we're going to get rid of Debo Samuel. And even if he plays really good next year, we believe that's probably the last year where we're going to get major production. Oh, CMC, you want to rework your deal? Oh, okay. Well, unfortunately, Saquon Barkley just went for $6.5 million on the open market. He's 20 months younger than you are. We're not reworking your deal. So are you going to stick around or are we just going to say it's over and you can go find a new team? Those are the shrewd moves that you have to make. Those are the shrewd moves that teams, when they feel like they have their franchise quarterback, make. Those are the shrewd moves. Hey, we may like this player. I may like that player personally, but it's time to move on. It's time to be honest with what this player is or is not anymore. And maybe sometimes that means you get rid of a player a little too early. And it's like, man, we shot ourselves in the foot on that one. But the other 3 players we definitely got rid of just in time before it was too late. I wish the 49ers had a little bit of more of that in them. I don't expect Cooper Kupp to garner a lot of interest. They may end up just having to cut him. I don't know. We'll see how that plays out. But I like where their head's at. And I wouldn't be shocked if they're in play for T. Higgins. They're like, this is great. We got Puka, who's basically younger, better you. Now we'll go get T. Higgins and we'll pair him with Puka Nacua or Garrett Wilson. Or I don't know. I don't know what their plan is. But I wouldn't be surprised. Would you? I wouldn't be surprised. Now, I do feel like the 49ers did that a little bit with Armstead, which I thought was great. The problem is when they did it with Armstead, they also reworked his deal the year prior. So they're going to take major cap hits for 2 years for him not to be here. They shouldn't have reworked his deal the year prior. They should have let it go and they should have let him walk and they would have been free and clear. So I like that they were shrewd with Eric Armstead, but I don't know. You can't rework deals and then be shrewd because you're just shooting yourself in the foot. I've seen a lot of Javon Holland stuff around. I love Javon Holland. Oregon Duck, you know me. I love my Oregon Ducks. When I talk to Dolphins fans, they're not too impressed with Holland. They think that Holland wilts in big games. They feel like he's not a good player when the games are the biggest. So I don't know if there's any truth to that. I'm just letting you know what their thoughts are. They marry that with PFF numbers to kind of back themselves up. I'm not watching Javon Holland snap in and snap out, so I'm not here to say that they're right or wrong. I'm just letting you know what their opinions are of him. I think Javon Holland is awesome, or he was in college. I wish the 49ers could have drafted him. But I don't know that I also just order of importance. Safety is not more important than defensive line. Safety is not more important than a corner. I don't know that safety is more important than a good linebacker. So I don't know if I want to pay a bunch of money or want the 49ers to pay a bunch of money in big cap hits to get the fourth most important position group on the defense. Like, I don't know if I'm a fan of that. I'm cool with drafting safeties. I do like a good safety draft. You know, if you can get a guy in round 3, something like that, or you feel like you have the Kyle Hamilton or Minka Fitzpatrick sitting there in round 1, sure. But as far as just paying big time money for a safety, I don't know if I'm a fan of that one. It's just the least important position group on a defense, I would say. Brother Bob says Kyle Levy shrewd. This is why I want to move on from him. You're shrewd for saying that. You're shrewd. All right, what are you guys talking about? Can you guys see? I can't see it on my end. I put together a poll. Can you guys see that when you come in? Does that show up for you? The Myles Garrett poll, where it's like Jerry Rice or okay. You see it? Okay, cool. Cool. Thank you, bro. Appreciate it. It shows up. I appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. What else is on your mind? I mean, those are the two things that were really on my mind. So Cohn and Krug came up with 18 needs, 8 offense and 8 defense, 2 special teams. Thoughts? Gosh, what is that list? Do they really need? All right, let's go offense. When you say needs, we're not talking starters, right? So they need running back depth. They need a second tight end. They need a legitimate backup quarterback. They need They might need a receiver, depending on what happens with Ayuk. They need a left guard, a center, another tackle, a swing tackle, and they need to get rid of Kyle Juszczyk. Is that it? Does that count? I don't know. I doubt that counts. But yeah, okay. I can see where their head's at. And then 8 on defense, defensive tackle, edge rusher, corner, second linebacker, safety. I don't know. Where's the 8? I guess I don't understand. I'm sure that they can talk through it pretty intelligently, but off the top of my head, I'm not coming up with that many. They definitely need a kicker and probably potentially a punter. So there's your special teams, or I would say kicker and kick returner. So there's your special teams. I don't understand that many on defense, but again, a lot of these these are depth pieces. This is what I'm talking about. Like, you look at the surface, and the offense really on the surface doesn't need a lot. If you're just looking from a starter perspective, I mean, really a left guard, and I'm sure we would all like to have a new center. So as far as starting positions go, we're talking maybe 2 players. But this is what I'm talking about when it comes to depth. And you don't have to spend big money to go get the guys that we're talking about or they were talking about. When you're talking about getting a second running back or a third running back, you can find that late in the draft. You can find that through undrafted free agents, potentially. You can find somebody really inexpensive on the open market. So we're not talking big time money, but every asset and every dollar spent does count. And so when you take a major asset like a first round pick and let's say a third round pick, and then a bunch of money to go get Myles Garrett, then all of a sudden your chances to fill those weaknesses diminish greatly. So I don't know if I agree that it's that many. And not all of them are created equally either. You know, I don't think, I certainly think, like, let's say wide receiver was on that list. I would say a second tight end and a left guard is far more pressing than another wide receiver. Now, I think they could use another wide receiver. If Ayuk's not going to start the year and Debo looks like he did, for sure, I get it. But it's not as pressing. Not all of those needs are created equally. Reddick's a free agent, so they could just sign Reddick. And actually, Reddick would be very inexpensive. Now, Robert Saleh, I say inexpensive in relevance to what a Myles Garrett's going to cost. I mean, we're talking maybe 2 years, 20 million, something like that. Maybe even less. I think Reddick is very affordable. The question is we got to remember he went through that whole thing with the Jets where he held out. I mean, what does Robert Saleh think of that? I think Robert Saleh was actually canned before Reddick came back, so they never even crossed paths. So whatever the issue was, and it sounds like Reddick had really bad representation, and so he got rid of that representation and then was able to come back and play and work out a 1-year deal. But he never got to talk through that with Robert Saleh, it sounds like. So is Robert Saleh really going to be a fan of Hassan Reddick? Probably not, maybe. But as far as like cost goes and assets, I believe he's a free agent and you can get him pretty dang cheap. Now, he's not going to be near as good as Myles Garrett, but I mean, price, assets, I'm for it. Cliff says, here's $5, but doesn't say why. I'm intrigued, Cliff. I'm assuming you wanted to say something with that, so go ahead and throw it in the chat, and I'll try to track it down. No. No. Fossey says, Jesse, who was your pick for the 49ers in the first round last year? And where did that player end up? I wanted Jackson Powers Johnson, I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly. And he ended up with the Raiders, didn't he? So yeah, I wanted a center. Like based off of how everything fell, Jackson Powers Johnson was the guy that I preferred. Trying to think of who else went around that time. I'm pretty sure that's who it was. So I don't know if he is even any good, to be honest with you. I don't know if he ended up playing well or what. Let's look it up, actually. Let's see. Let's see real quick. Jackson Powers Johnson. Let's give PFF numbers or PFF grades. Again, not the biggest fan of PFF as far as their grading goes, but I don't know how else to look to see if he was good. Looks like he ended up playing guard, not center, which is interesting. I think he's a true center, but sure. And he graded pretty high. He was the 31st rated guard in run blocking grade out of 135. So he's a number one guard as far as a run blocker goes. 32 teams, right? And then 42 out of 135 as far as pass blocking. And his overall grade was 56, that looks like. Looks like he allowed 2 sacks and 956 snaps. I don't know. He wasn't great. It doesn't look like he's great by any means, but it's pretty good. He actually played both. He played 421 snaps at center and 506 at left guard, and then 29 at right guard. So it sounds like they were kind of moving him all over the place. I'd be curious to see what it looks like this next year. But yeah, Jackson Powers Johnson was, I believe, the guy that I wanted it last year. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the hard part about taking Pearsall is he's always going to be compared to Coleman, Ladd. Who else? The Texas receiver that went to the Colts. I want to say the receiver for the Jaguars went in the round 2 as well. So, I mean, he's always going to be compared. Yeah, Cooper. I wasn't a big fan of Cooper. I'm not going to lie. But and this is the thing. A lot of it's about fit. I don't know that Cooper would have been as effective here as he is with Fangio. On to Jets news. Jets are expected to cut Rodgers. Ooh, should we go get Rodgers? Huh? Rodgers? No, I'm good. Okay, here's a question for you. Here's a question. Would you rather have... So somebody brought up the scenario earlier. Would you rather have Rodgers for a year and then figure out the quarterback position after this year if it meant you could go get Myles Garrett, or sign Brock Purdy and not get Myles Garrett? I mean, Rodgers is such a head case, man. I don't think I can advocate for Rodgers. I really can't. As far as player goes, I mean, he played. We got to remember he was coming off of a torn Achilles. He actually played pretty good down the stretch, considering. But whatever, dude. I just like Brock's demeanor a heck of a lot more than I like Rodgers. I'm sorry. Yeah, I don't think he did, especially down the stretch. And that's kind of my hesitation on Cousins. And by the way, I'm not advocating for Kirk Cousins, but people are like quick to say, "Hey, this player's washed." They were coming off of a torn Achilles. I mean, Dre Greenlaw got on the field for a half of a game and was done coming off of a torn Achilles. I would expect a bunch of things happen. If we look at Cousins and we look at Rodgers, they both were coming off of a torn Achilles. They both were playing for the first times really with new teams. I mean, I don't know what it is. And they could both be washed. I'm not discounting that fact. I'm just not willing to say they are washed. If they're another year removed from an Achilles and then they're playing for a team that they're familiar with, who am I to say that they can't resurrect their career? Now, I'm also not, I wouldn't advocate for taking a chance on them. I don't want to find out here because they might be washed. And if you brought them here, you're not bringing them here to be a backup, I would imagine. Maybe Kirk Cousins, you can get away with that. Rodgers is not going anywhere to be a backup. He's just not. He's probably going to retire, if anything. Or he'll be a Raider. Or actually, put Rodgers with the Steelers. I'd be intrigued by that. Rodgers with the Steelers would be kind of a fun watch. I'm not going to lie. I think that actually might be a good end place for Rodgers. It might work out, but I don't want to find out if he's washed. Not over here. I'm good. Yeah, and you might be right. I'm just not willing to say it. I'm just not willing to say it until I see it for another year. You know what I mean? Yeah, yeah. I'm sure Robert Sala would be a big fan of bringing in Aaron Rodgers, right? Sure, he loved it that much. Trying to make it home in the storm. Oh, what's going on? What storm? What storm you caught in? Give me cousins in that scenario. You'd rather have the cousin scenario. That's fair. I got you. Yeah, I'm not. That's the other thing. I'm not going to acquiesce to Aaron Rodgers and what the heck he wants. Like that's just crazy. Just not going to do it. Papa says if you could change the outcome of any 3 Super Bowl losses, which one would you choose? Man, that's tough. That's tough. Um, I would say the loss to the Ravens. I would say the loss to the Ravens. For multiple different reasons. One, I really wish Willis and Bowman, Justin Smith, Frank Gore. I really wish they could have gotten a ring. I do. And then also, my dad was alive then. He wasn't alive for the 2019 Super Bowl. He had passed the year prior. And obviously, if he wasn't alive then he wasn't alive for this last Super Bowl. So he was a 49er fan as well. And I think, and I was watching that game over at his house. So for them to win that game, all those veterans to get the ring that I felt like they deserved, and then for us to watch that game together, that would be a memory I'd like to have if they had won the Super Bowl. So I'll go with that one. That's a good question, though, man. I'm curious to know. I think everybody would have a different answer on this one for different reasons. I'm curious to see what you guys think. Who would you, what Super Bowl would you want the 49ers to win? Would you want it to be the Ravens Super Bowl? I'll tell you which one I least would want them to win. That would be the 2019 Super Bowl. Because Jimmy Garoppolo would probably still be here if that were the case. And I'm good on Jimmy Garoppolo. So that's the one I would least like them to win. Although I was in Miami for that Super Bowl and partying that night would have been fantastic. So, there is that. But the Ravens won. The Ravens won for sure. For me. Rest his soul too, man. He passed away as well. I agree, Jesse, about the Ravens. Sorry to hear about your pops. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Sven says, if the Niners win the Ravens Super Bowl, is Cap still quarterback one today and Harbaugh still the coach? Ooh, man. I will say no, Cap is not the quarterback. Harbaugh might still be the coach. Harbaugh and Trent Baalke might still be the GM. I don't know. I would say it's more likely that Harbaugh would still be the coach versus Kaepernick being the quarterback. Man, Kaepernick sure was great. He was electric. Electric. I mean, listen, say what we want about the success of Brock Purdy, but nobody did in the playoffs what he did. Out of him, Jimmy, Brock. I mean, I remember watching that Packer game with some friends that were Packers fans and watching him run the way that he did on that team was unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable. I mean, he was electric. But Kaepernick I don't feel like he loved the quarterback position the way that you have to love it and be obsessed with it to be great. I think there were holes in his game that it seemed like he was unwilling to fix. Um, and I think that would eventually just caught up with him. So I would say no, he probably still wouldn't be the quarterback. Maybe Harbaugh would still be the coach. But that's interesting. I don't know. I mean, that's a good question. Got that one. Got that one. Trade Purdy plus a pick for Miles and pick up Rattler. No, I didn't. No to Spencer Rattler. What has Spencer Rattler done to prove that he's anything good? Could you trade Brock Purdy and pick 11 to the Browns for Garrett and pick 2? That one would be a trade that I would be intrigued by. If you were going to trade Brock Purdy, could you trade him and pick 11 for Myles Garrett and pick 2? And if the answer is yes, would you say no to that trade? Because you can draft a quarterback. I mean, you're going through that whole process again. You could do the Aaron Rodgers, Kirk Cousins, draft a quarterback, let him compete, play the best guy for this year and figure it out, and then have your guy hopefully for the future. I don't know. I mean, I think out of all the like crazy hypothetical trades that are thrown around, that makes more sense than trading Nick Bosa, because Bosa's $30 million against your cap. And I think that you're probably trying to pair them together. So I don't know. What do you think? Would you do that one? You'll do that in a heartbeat? Yeah, you could trade it for J. If you think JJ, although no, I don't think you could, because I think the Vikings are going to move on from Darnold. You could, I mean, there's another option. You could, not that I'm not a big Sam Darnold guy at all, but if you make that trade, you could draft a guy and you could bring in Sam Darnold to be your bridge quarterback. I don't know. Too many hypotheticals that are not going to happen, but that's one I'd be intrigued by. Got your question. That was a really good question, Sven. Has he? I've like a little brother that you pick on and don't like. I don't know. I've never said anything great about Sam Darnold. That's for sure. Don't you put that evil on me, right? If we can get a QB to do 85% of what Purdy does, that's what I'm saying. That's my whole take. You don't need a quarterback better than Purdy. You need a quarterback that can do 85% of Brock, which is easier to find than you think at a fraction of the cost, because you're going to beef up the rest of your team so well that it's not going to matter. It's not going to matter. Aggressively pursue Dahlman in free agency, trade pick 11 and 99 to Cleveland for Garrett, and use the picks in second and third round for a defensive tackle. Yeah, it's not a bad plan. Can he, though? I don't know that that's the guy. I'm not saying he can't. I was not a big Rattler guy coming out. I'm open to it. I just, and by the way, I'm not judging him based off of the way he played with the Saints with everything falling apart around him. That's not his fault as a rookie, especially. I don't know. I mean, imagine in the scenario where you trade the 11th pick and Brock for Garrett in the second pick. You could bring in either Fields or Wilson. Probably not Fields. You could bring in Wilson. Again, not a big fan of Wilson, but you could bring him in, and you could bring in a veteran and draft a quarterback and just let them compete, and the best guy wins for the year. And then after that, you hand it over to either Wilson, who's still young, or the rookie quarterback. No matter what. In this offense, yeah, I think he could be. I do. I don't like Mac Jones though. I don't like his temperament. So I think could he produce 85%? Yeah, but there is like a mental aspect that I don't mess with when it comes to Mac Jones. Mac Jones to me has a little bit of young Baker in him from a mental aspect. So, and I wasn't a fan of young Baker. Credit to him for turning it around. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Why not Mordecai over Rattler? You never know. If we trade Purdy for Garrett, might as well tank this season coming up and go all in for Arch Manning. Are we sure Arch Manning, other than having the best last name, is going to be a good quarterback, though? Like a lot of people are really, really high on him. Oh, that's a good call. That's a good call. Oh, okay. You're saying do it, but do it for Max Crosby? Okay. Yeah, Willis was breaking down. Mac Jones would bully Kyle. Could you imagine Mac Jones just like, shut up, Kyle, punk. Your plays suck. Jimmy was right. Jimmy was right. Sit on that bench. Talk to me in front of the media. Call my plays. Lawrence was one of the highest rated quarterback prospects ever. Yeah, I mean that's the thing, right? The Arch Manning thing is you just never know. I don't. The plan certainly is not tank for a quarterback that's coming out in 2 or 3 years. Like that is not the plan. I don't agree with that one. But yeah, he does start this year. We're gonna see. Mac Jones. Shut up, Kyle. It's my team now. Oh, Mac Jones. Man, that's wild. All right, y'all. I'm gonna get out of here. 4-man front is gonna be on my channel tomorrow. I don't know. I'm gonna have to figure out time. I do need to watch more for sure. But last week we didn't do 4-man front, so Tuesday made a lot of sense. Maybe on Thursday. See, but then I'm going on Ryan's channel Thursday for a pre-recorded video. I don't know. We'll see. I do gotta find time. I just don't know that I'll be able to do it out in the open, but that's the plan. We'll figure it out. All right, y'all. Stay blessed. Much love. We'll talk soon. Peace.